Blessings. I am Pastor Bruce Rosengata, and I'm looking forward to Sunday services at New Hope Community Church tomorrow. Hopefully, many of you are able to be there, but we know that there are individuals that can't come, but they want to stay in touch with what's happening. They want to stay in touch with the message series, and so we've been posting these mini versions of messages, and I want to continue that today. I'm diving into a message that I kind of renamed. I originally called it The Call to Lead, and I actually thought it was better to title it The Recall to Lead. It's a very interesting passage that centers on an event that occurs in John chapter 21 after the resurrection of Jesus. This is unique because during this time, Jesus is going to meet and confront the individuals that are disciples, the apostles, the remnant of those that have journeyed with him to Jerusalem, witnessed the crucifixion, now witness the resurrection. And on that day, among the individuals who are there are people who abandoned him, people who betrayed him. Where are the 72? Where are the 12? Only one was there at the cross. This is a time where there are lessons for us as disciples on what it's like when God is calling us back. When we've struggled, perhaps we've failed, there are challenges that we're facing, and these are lessons during those moments. So, if you have a Bible with you, you could open it up. We're going to be in John chapter 21. And I want to share some lessons from this encounter that Jesus has by the Sea of Galilee with his disciples after the resurrection. And he deals with them on issues of continuing and leadership and things like this. Follow along with me. In John chapter 21, it says this: Afterward, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee. It happened this way: Simon Peter, Thomas, also known as Didymus, the twin, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and two other disciples were together. "I'm going out to fish," Simon Peter told them. And they said, "We'll go with you." So they went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. You see, there's a first truth that's significant in this passage occurs in these opening verses. It's very common during times of uncertainty for disciples or leaders to face temptation to quit, face temptation to go backwards, face temptation to just give up. Here at this point, the disciples have been greatly challenged. They have been unsettled. Seismic changes have taken place. Jesus has died. Jesus has been raised. What does all this mean? How do we move forward? Who knows what we do next? And in the midst of this, their choice is, look, let's just go back to fishing. We know how to do that. Let's go fish. They go out that night. They spend the night out fishing. See, it's a very true statement that during times of uncertainty, it's easy for leaders or disciples or followers of the forgiver to face the temptation. I just want to quit. I just want to give up on all this thing. And here we see the disciples choosing that. They've gone out. They know he's raised. They know he's died. They know that everything is changing, but they can come up with no better idea on what to do than let's just go back to fishing. There's a second truth that occurs in the very next verse. In verse 4, it says this: Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not recognize it was Jesus. Major truth here for every disciple, major truth here for every leader. In times of challenge, in times of difficulty, it's possible to not recognize the presence of the forgiver. This is Jesus who they've lived with for the last 3.5 years. They've traveled with, they've seen do amazing things, but they are so out of touch now, so rattled by circumstances, so consumed with what they're doing, they don't even recognize who it is on the shore. I can relate to that. It's during times of busyness, times of challenge, times of difficulty, when it's so easy to lose track of the forgiver's presence in our life. It's one of those great truths. We have to be careful, especially in responding to Hurricane Ian, in everything that we have to do, in everything that we're challenged with all these things. We have to make sure that we are staying close, our eyes on Jesus, because it can be very easy to lose track of his presence in our lives during this time. The passage goes on, and starting in verse 5, it opens the door to the next truth. It says this: He called out to them, "Friends, haven't you any fish?" "No," they answered. He said, "Throw your net on the right side of the boat, you'll find some." And when they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the number of fish. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It's the Lord." As soon as Simon Peter heard him say, "It's the Lord," he wrapped his outer garment around him, for he had taken it off, jumped in the water. The other disciples followed in the boat, towing the full net of fish, for they're not very far from shore, about 100 yards. When they landed, they saw a fire of burning coals. There were fish on it, some bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish you've just caught." So Simon Peter climbed back into the boat and dragged the net ashore. It was full of large fish, 153. And even with so many, the net was not torn. And Jesus said to them, "Come, have breakfast." None of the disciples dared ask him, "Who are you?" They knew it was the Lord. Jesus came, took the bread, gave it to them, did the same with the fish. This was now the third time Jesus appeared to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. Here's the good news that I'm reminded of in this passage. When we're in times of great challenge, or maybe even it's in times of a failure, times of setback, the good news is this, is Jesus meets us where we are to bring us back into service for him. He goes out and meets the disciples. He doesn't wait for them to come back to him. He's on the shore waiting for them. He sees them. He calls them to himself. He restores their calling to the mission, to what's ahead. Come on, gentlemen, let's eat together. Let's eat some of those fish. Come, and they all know who it is. And they sat back down in. This was the third time he's appeared to them. Jesus is the one who initiates this recall back to service, the recall back to effectiveness, this recall to what is next. There's a fourth lesson. This is probably the most sobering one. In the face of failure, in the face of setback, in the face of challenge, in the face of difficulty, Jesus leads us back to reinstatement. In the next part of the passage, I've got a subtitle in my Bible, in the NIV. It says, Jesus reinstates Peter. Wow. Jesus is going to deal with what has occurred, with the betrayal, with the setback. It says this, and when they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" Jesus initiates this reinstatement. Jesus starts the recall. Jesus is about to lead Peter back, and he's going to do some very interesting things in the calling him back. Peter will have denied him 3 times. There's going to be 3 times Jesus is going to affirm his love and commitment. Full ramifications are going to be considered. The failure, the setback, the challenges that Peter had gone through all had to be addressed. Then it reveals this great reminder of what it means to be a disciple who's entrusted to lead, and a disciple who's been entrusted to have impact, a disciple who's been entrusted to make a difference in the kingdom. Leaders will care for the sheep. In the very next verse, it's going to continue that. At the end of verse 15, after Jesus has asked Simon Peter, "Do you love me more than these?" Peter says, "Yes, Lord, you know I love you." Jesus says, "Feed my lambs." Again, Jesus said, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He answered, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Take care of my sheep." The third time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" And Peter's hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, "Do you love me?" He said, "Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you." And Jesus said, "Feed my sheep. At the heart of the recall is the call to serve. Peter's being called back. He's being challenged once again. Do you really love me? Then make a difference. Feed my sheep. Care for them. Care for the sheep. Deal with this, Peter. Move forward. I'm entrusting you. I'm challenging you. You see, it's possible for leaders to stall. It's possible for any disciple to stall, to be challenged, to be overcome by circumstances, to face difficulty. And in the end, when Jesus calls them back, yes, he's going to deal with the fall. But more importantly, he wants to reaffirm, are you going to care for the sheep? Will you fulfill the calling, the ministry? You see, last truth of the passage. No matter where you are in the journey, the call will always remain the same, to follow him. Following him meant caring for the sheep. Verse 18 says this, verily, truly, I say to you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and you went where you wanted. But when you are old, you'll stretch out your hands and someone else will dress you and lead you where you don't want to go. Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death which Peter would glorify him. Then he said, follow me. It's very intriguing. It talks about, look, when you're young, you're making that decision. When you're old, other people are going to be involved. But he kind of implies this at the end, but it doesn't matter. He just simply says, look, wherever you are in this journey, follow me. Follow me. New Hope Community Church and its Anglo service on Sunday morning has been embracing these series of messages on what it means to be marked as his disciple. I think this message sums up one of the great significant points. No matter where we are in the journey, do you know what disciples do? They follow Jesus, period. That's what they do. They follow him. During times of challenge, during times of difficulty, during times of setback, during times when they may have failed, when Jesus calls them back, the calling remains the same. Follow me. The church has certainly had its share of times of challenge and times of difficulty, especially with Hurricane Ian. But what is the calling of each of the disciples who claim this church? Simply to follow him. I'm Pastor Bruce Resengata. I'm the lead pastor at New Hope Community Church. We have an Anglo service that meets at 9 a.m. on Sunday morning. There is a associated Presbyterian congregation that meets at 11. Nueva Esperanza, our Hispanic service, meets at 1:30 in the afternoon. On Tuesday nights, Celebrate Recovery, a congregation of people discovering victory. They meet at 7 o'clock. We invite you to come to any of our services and discover more of what it's like to be a follower of the forgiver. Blessings on you. Hope to see you soon.